to talk about how to mix Thistle and Throw's chalk paint powder. Now, it's definitely not an exact science. Depending on the project that you're working on at the time or the consistency that you want from your paint, you can either add more water to get a thinner, smoother consistency, or you can add more chalk paint powder to get a thicker paint with more adhesion. Okay, but we recommend typically adding 1 part chalk paint powder and 2 parts water, and that's a good base to start from, and you can always add and take away depending on the consistency that you want or depending on the piece of furniture that you're working on. For instance, if you're working on an unfinished piece of wood that's pre-sanded, no varnish or lacquer on top of it, you might want your paint to be a little bit thinner, to have a little less chalk paint powder in it because you're not going to need as much adhesion. If you're working on a piece of furniture that's been varnished or heavily glossed, you're going to want a lot more chalk paint powder, you're going to want more adhesion, and you want your paint to be a lot thicker. Okay, so what we're going to start with, we've got a few bits and pieces here with us. Now I have our chalk paint powder. I have warm water. Now I recommend warm water because it helps the chalk paint powder dissolve into a really smooth, grit-free consistency. A tablespoon measurer because you want to measure out your chalk paint powder. Even if you come up with your own preferred consistencies, it's always best to measure it so you know what you like every time. You can do the same thing. Now I have a magic whisk, and now this is if you want to stir your chalk paint powder, and the other method is going to be shaking your powder in the jar. Let's take 1 tablespoon of our chalk paint powder, and this is going to be our 1 part chalk paint powder. We're going to be using tablespoon measurements because we're just mixing with a tester pot. And add that in your jar. And then we want to take warm water and add 2 parts of warm water, and that's measuring out 2 tablespoons. Again, it's not an exact science, so you can mix it up, test your consistency, and see if you want it a little bit thicker or a little bit thinner, see if it's not quite getting smooth enough. Now initially, let's use our magic whisk. Now, the reason why I use a magic whisk instead of any other whisk or mixer is because this stops your chalk paint mixture from getting aerated, so it stops it from looking frothy or getting bubbly, and it also helps to mix in all of the chalk paint powder. So you want to mix in all of the minerals, all of the chalk and clay ingredients, so that it's a really nice smooth mixture. Okay, now my mixture for the consistency that I want, because the piece I'm going to be painting today has a lot of gloss and varnish on it. So I think I want it to be a little bit thicker than it is. So all I'm going to do is add 1 more tablespoon of chalk paint powder, and that's going to make it a 2-to-2 ratio. 2 parts chalk paint powder to 2 parts warm water. Put the jar's lid on and do the shake method. Now I actually prefer shaking because I can really ensure that everything is completely mixed together. It's almost like mixing it in a blender. Everything blends together perfectly. And now this consistency is much more what I'm looking for when I want to put it on top of something that's been varnished or lacquered. So you can see that it's stuck to the sides of the glass jar, so it's obviously got a really nice thick consistency to it. Now that I've really shaken it, and you notice I didn't kind of go nuts and shake it, it's obviously up to you what you do. But that way when I open it, it's not kind of an explosion onto me. Perfect, so perfect consistency, that's what I would like. And if you're using a jar, just add your emulsion paint directly to your jar. Okay, so once you've added your emulsion paint, you can either stir again with your whisk or you can shake. Again, like I said, shaking is my favorite, so I'm going to shake it in my jar. And now, as you mix, now I'm just using a white, so it'll be a little bit harder to see the difference between the chalk paint powder mixture and your emulsion paint. But I can see that the colors are slightly different. So as I'm mixing, I always like to look at the bottom of my jar. So if you use a container that's clear, it'll really help you to ensure that all of your mixture is fully mixed in. Okay, so you can look at the bottom of your jar and notice it's all been mixed in properly. It's mixed up really well. Perfect. So if you've liked this video, like it, subscribe to our channel, and catch all of our new tutorials that come up. Make sure you also follow us on our social medias, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, to catch any new product launches or tutorials that come out. See you guys next time!